In an incident that has sent shockwaves through legal and political circles alike, the deportation of Kilmar Ario Garcia stands as a stark reminder of the fragile nature of constitutional protections when faced with executive overreach. This report examines how a legal resident of the United States, safeguarded by a judicial order, was abruptly deported to El Salvador, a nation he fled in 2011 due to relentless gang violence, despite clear legal injunctions that forbade such action. The case exposes systemic failures and raises pressing questions about the integrity of the rule of law under the current administration. Kilmar Ario Garcia, whose background is marred by harrowing experiences in his native El Salvador, secured refuge in the United States after escaping a climate of terror and extortion. In 2011, amid escalating threats from organized gangs that pursued his family and harassed his community, Mr. Garcia sought asylum on American soil. His legal status was solidified over time, culminating in a 2019 court order explicitly protecting him from deportation to El Salvador. 2. This ruling, intended to shield him from further harm, should have served as a bulwark against any unwarranted removal from the United States. Yet, in a move that many legal experts deem a flagrant violation of constitutional rights, Mr. Garcia was included in a mass deportation operation targeting alleged Venezuelan gang members, a categorization he categorically... Central to this case is the failure to honor the Due Process Clause embedded in the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. This clause is designed to ensure that no individual is deprived of life, liberty, or property without a fair and thorough legal process. In Mr. Garcia's situation, the federal government bypassed critical legal safeguards, ignoring the very protections that his court order guaranteed. Instead of presenting him before a judge and affording him an opportunity to contest his deportation, officials opted for an expedited and indiscriminate removal. The very essence of due process, a series of legal rights that includes the right to notice, representation, and a fair hearing, was effectively nullified in this instance. The Trump administration's handling of this deportation has sparked intense scrutiny. In the aftermath, officials characterized the incident as an administrative error, a designation that seems to obscure the deliberate bypassing of established legal procedures. Rather than acknowledging the gravity of their misstep, representatives admitted that the necessary mechanisms to reverse the deportation were absent, leaving Mr. Garcia stranded in a perilous situation. Despite long-standing agreements with the government of El Salvador, which, in theory, could facilitate the repatriation of erroneously deported individuals, there appears to be no commitment to securing Mr. Garcia's safe return. This reluctance raises alarming questions about the administration's priorities and its willingness to compromise the constitutional rights of its residents for the sake of bureaucratic expediency. The implications for Mr. Garcia are profound. Being transferred to a detention facility in El Salvador, a country notorious for its harsh treatment of prisoners and widespread reports of torture, places him in immediate jeopardy. It is not merely a bureaucratic miscalculation. It is an act that threatens the very life and liberty of a man who had already suffered enough. The fact that Mr. Garcia, who was granted protection by a judicial mandate, now finds himself in a situation where his safety is severely compromised, underscores a systemic failure that cannot be brushed aside as an isolated misstep. Legal experts have been unequivocal in their assessment of the situation. They argue that the deportation represents not just a breach of administrative protocol, but a direct assault on the due process rights enshrined in the Constitution. In the Constitution. The administration's justification that the deportation was an error for which no corrective mechanism exists ignores the fundamental legal obligation to protect individuals from arbitrary state action. In the same breath, previous actions by the administration have demonstrated a readiness to disregard judicial orders when they conflict with its broader political objectives. This pattern of behavior is deeply troubling, as it erodes public trust in the fairness and impartiality of the legal system. In an ideal scenario, the federal government would have taken immediate steps to rectify this egregious error. Mr. Garcia should have been swiftly brought before a judge, where his legal representation could have invoked the court order that barred his deportation. Such due process measures would have not only preserved his safety, but also reinforced the principle that no government agency is above the law. Instead, the administration's failure to act reveals a disturbing willingness to sacrifice individual rights in pursuit of a more draconian immigration agenda. A policy stance that some argue is intended to send a chilling message to potential dissenters. The broader ramifications of this case extend well beyond the plight of one individual. It is emblematic of a dangerous trend where executive power is wielded in ways that undermine the checks and balances that are fundamental to American democracy. The use of mass deportations without proper legal oversight sets a precedent that could have lasting effects on how constitutional rights are interpreted and enforced. When legal processes are circumvented, the very foundation of the American justice system is called into question, leaving citizens vulnerable to state overreach and arbitrary detention. Judicial recourse in this instance remains a contentious issue. While courts possess the authority to hold officials in contempt for violating judicial orders, the practical application of this power has been limited in cases involving high-level administrative. Should a court decide to exercise this authority, it might force the administration to address the wrongful deportation in a more immediate and decisive manner. However, historical precedent suggests that such measures are rarely employed, particularly when they risk igniting a broader political backlash. The reluctance to confront executive missteps head-on speaks volumes about the current state of judicial independence in politically charged environments. Facts. Political analysts warn that the ramifications of this incident could resonate across multiple facets of governance. The unilateral actions taken by the administration not only undermine the established legal framework, but also serve as a stark illustration of the dangers inherent in concentrating power within the executive branch. By demonstrating a willingness to sidestep due process, the current administration appears intent on sending a message that legal safeguards can be overridden when they conflict with its political ambitions. This creates an atmosphere of uncertainty and fear among legal residents, who may now question the security of their rights and the reliability of the institutions meant to protect them. Furthermore, this case highlights a troubling dichotomy within the administration's actions. On one hand, there is an eagerness to employ aggressive immigration policies that may border on the extrajudicial. On the other, there is an apparent incapacity or unwillingness to correct clear errors when they occur. The contrast is stark when compared to earlier decisions, such as the controversial release of insurrectionists early in the administration's term, decisions that were politically motivated yet lacked the immediate human consequences witnessed in Mr. Garcia's deportation. In both scenarios, however, the underlying message is the same. The administration prioritizes its political objectives over the adherence to constitutional norms, regardless of the human cost involved. It is crucial, then, to view Mr. Garcia's case not as an isolated anomaly, but as a symptom of a broader crisis in governance. The erosion of due process rights and the normalization of administrative overreach signal a shift in the balance of power, a shift that could have dire implications for the future of civil liberties in the United States. The responsibility now lies with the judiciary, lawmakers, and civil society to hold those in power accountable and to ensure that the fundamental rights enshrined in the Constitution are not sacrificed on the altar of political expediency. In conclusion, the wrongful deportation of Kilmar Ariel Garcia represents a profound failure of administrative and legal accountability. A legal resident, shielded by a judicial mandate, has been cast into a perilous situation that not only defies constitutional protections, but also highlights a dangerous trend of executive overreach. The case demands urgent attention from all branches of government and serves as a cautionary tale about the fragility of due process in times of political turmoil. As the legal system grapples with the fallout, it is imperative that steps be taken to rectify this injustice and reaffirm the principles that lie at the heart of American democracy. The preservation of constitutional rights is not merely a legal obligation, it is the cornerstone of a free and just society, one that must be zealously defended against any encroachment by those who would seek to subvert it for their own ends.